Proč státy selhávají? Název jedné z nejvýznamnějších publikací profesora na Massachusettském technologickém institutu ve Spojených státech a především také jednoho ze 3 laureátů Nobelovy ceny za ekonomii, kterou obdržel v loňském roce. Ekonom Darona Acemoglu je mým hostem. Hello, professor. Welcome to Prague.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
In my introduction, I mentioned one of your most influential books, Why Nations Fail. In today's world, Western world, do you think there are nations that fail? And if so, what does it mean for the democracy as we know it?
Well, Why Nations Fail emphasizes the importance of inclusive institutions that provide opportunities, incentives, and democratic processes. In some sense, the lessons were written at the time, 2010, 2011, for the developing world, which didn't always have inclusive institutions. Today, I think inclusive institutions are in danger in the Western world. The United States is seeing a complete collapse of its institutions. If you look at international organizations, scores of democracy, civil rights, judiciary independence in the United States, they have collapsed over the last 10 years, not just during Trump, but during the last 10 years. And so there's a danger in other places, in France, in Germany. I think we have to really understand that institutions are critical for the future, especially for an innovation economy, for building a fair economy, and we have to really defend democratic institutions.
Your focus is obviously, among others, political economy, and here I must mention the tariff policy of the American president, Donald Trump. To what extent do you think that the tariffs Donald Trump has already implied or is planning to imply affect the global economy?
Well, you have to think about what the agenda of the Trump administration is, and I think first of all, it's a domestic agenda to increase the power of the presidency. And if you look at the way that the tariffs have been implemented, bilaterally, with a lot of power concentrated in the hands of the president to renegotiate them, I think they are part of this domestic agenda. They are trying to increase the president's and his administration's power. And that is, I think, a very important clue to why they are designed this way. If you wanted to design tariffs, according to some economic theory, which may or may not say tariffs are optimal, but you would never design them this way. So these tariffs are maximally disruptive because they create so much uncertainty, but they create so much uncertainty because the president wants to have the power to renegotiate them if he wants them. So that is why we are really at the cusp of a new set of global relations that we don't understand, and I think it's very difficult to forecast them, and every country has to be flexible enough and adaptable enough to respond to these changes in the way that it can.
And how do you think the events in global economy can affect smaller Central European economies, such as the Czech one, which is export-oriented, very open economy? How can it affect Czech citizens?
Well, it is the export-oriented countries that are most in danger, because who are they going to export? That's going to change. International financial system is going to become affected because the international financial system was bolstered by the US dollar, which was liquid and reliable US assets that could change. And bilateral relations are not good for export-oriented small economies. How could the Czech Republic negotiate with the United States that has so much military, social, and economic power? So that's why it's fortunate that I think the Czech Republic is part of the European Union, and I think the European Union needs to play a more important role. And I think this is also a wake-up call for European countries that they have to really rely on their own institutions, supranational institutions such as the EU, and domestic institutions. And I think that is probably the small silver lining, that this is going to motivate European lawmakers to bolster their defense, their economy, their institutions a little more.
You partly touched upon this, but when doing research for this interview, I saw one of your interviews where you said that the era of globalization is coming to an end. Could you tell our viewers why do you think so, and what do you think will come after this era?
Well, what I must have said, what I should have said, is that the era of globalization as we have been used to is coming to an end. I don't think we're going to go to a world in which there is no international trade. International finance is still going to continue. And most of the challenges that we face, climate change, energy, pandemics, nuclear war, mega companies that need to be taxed and regulated, those are global challenges. So we need some sort of global order. But what that order will be different. and the hyper-globalization with these huge supply chains and low-wage countries supplying, everything to industrialized nations, I think that's going to change. But whether we go to something that's stable will depend on what sort of institutions we build, and it will also depend on whether U.S. domestic institutions survive.
Your recent focus is also on modern technologies, such as implications of AI into the economy. As we are at the summit where the job market is heavily discussed, we often hear that AI or other modern technologies can take over and steal our jobs, let's say. Do you agree with that? And how do you think we should use modern technologies to our advantage?
Well, forecasting the effects of AI is not like weather forecasting. AI does what we design AI to do, and I think there are many different ways of designing AI. If we turn AI into an automation technology, of course it will create inequality, of course it will take jobs. But my argument has been that AI is also a very useful information technology that can make workers more productive. And if we can go in that direction, it can help create jobs. The problem is that's not the direction we are going in. So on our current path, unless we have more competition, we have more focusing on pro-human, pro-worker AI, we're not going to get there, and we'll get, in fact, more joblessness, more inequality. So I think we are at the cusp of making very important decisions on AI, and I think we should make them with better knowledge, better understanding of the potentials of AI and the consequences of the automation agenda.
Do you think that the workers are willing to re-qualify?
Yes. I think if we provide the right incentives, yes. Not every worker, but there will be enough possibilities there.
Thank you, Professor, for your time for the Czech television. I wish you best of luck in your future.
Thank you very much. It was great talking to you. Thank you.